right, this is going to be a video demonstrating how you can sort of enable a hybrid mode on the Quad Cortex today with the help of a MIDI controller. So assuming you have one that you can use, this would be something you can do. But before we get into that, let's start with some basics, which is why do we even need hybrid mode, and what modes are there that exist? There are actually 3 modes currently. Stomp, scene, and preset. And I'm going to not worry about preset mode for the moment and just talk about stomp and scenes because those are the most relevant to the discussion that's coming for hybrid mode. So here we have a basic preset, and let's just say I were to add some pedals to this, or sorry, add amp. I don't really care about sound at this point. I'm just picking stuff. I guess let me throw a noise gate in here. So great. So you have a gate in there, and in stomp mode, what you'll see is automatically these buttons get assigned to those pedals. So this, since I added the amp first, is the amp. This is actually going to be the cabinet, which is not great to listen to. And that will be the gate. And so in stomp mode, you can have as many blocks as you want with up to 8 assigned to an actual foot switch on the Quad Cortex. So if I wanted to reorder these, I could do this. Whoops. Click that first. Find a switch, C, they done. And now they're in order. But I can add additional blocks, say a delay out there. I can have that unassigned. It doesn't need to be on a stomp. It will just always be working. And none of these 3 will affect that. So that's stomp mode in a nutshell. It allows you to have as complex of a preset as you would like, and then assign up to 8, right? You've got 8 switches here. So up to 8 blocks to be stomped on or off. If we change this into scene mode allows you to enable and disable blocks like stomp mode, but it allows you to adjust other parameters. So in this case, I'm in scene A. And let's say I don't want this delay on. So I hit the bypass of that, and now that delay is off. And so let's make a scene B where that delay is now on. So like stomp mode, where I can hit a foot switch, have things enable or disable, scene mode allows me to do similar things with block bypass, but also allows me to change the parameters. So let's say I have B where that delay is on, and I want to make a scene C. I want the parameters of that delay to be a bit different. So let's say I want way more feedback. Okay. And well, I can just leave it. So what you'll see is I can switch to scene B and the feedback goes down. But the block is still enabled because I didn't change the bypass state between B and C. I only changed a parameter. And if I go to A, you'll see that it's bypassed. So scenes allow you to do really complex things. You can change any parameter of any block, including bypass state, but any other setting, and switch between scenes. But much like stomps, you only get 8 scenes. And if you want essentially a stomp-like functionality, you need to eat up an entire scene for it per block, sort of, right? Like if you want at least one block toggled, but everything else the same in scene mode, that needs to be its own scene. And if you want multiple blocks or multiple combinations of blocks, you only have 8 scenes to play with. Whereas in stomps, you can individually toggle all of those states independently of each other, but you can't adjust parameters. You can't do more complex presets where you can vary those things. So those are the 2 existing modes on the Quad Cortex, right? So stomps, you get 8 configurable blocks. Scenes, you get 8. So why do people want hybrid mode? Well, hybrid mode, as promised by Neural, I think currently would be 4 and 4. So in that scenario, you might have the top 4 buttons be scenes, and the bottom 4 buttons be stomps within those scenes. At first, I guess counterintuitively, it seems like, well, that would be less functionality because I can have like 8 scenes and I can have 8 stomps. But the reality is, by pulling those stomps out, even just the 4 stomps, you end up getting 4 scenes. So you've got half those buttons for scenes. And then you essentially get per scene 24, I believe it is, if I'm doing the math right, stomp variations. I'm sure if I get it wrong, someone will be more than happy to tell me. So instead of getting 8 scenes or 8 stomps with a 4x4 hybrid mode, you get 96 possible variants. So you can have scene A, all stomps off. Scene A, 1 stomp on. Scene A, 2 stomps on. Scene A, 3 stomps, 4 stomps, so on. Scene A with stomp number 2 only. Scene A with stomp number 2 and 3 only, right? So all those variations, I believe you get 24. I think it's 4 factorial. So you get 96 tonal combinations. But I guess the issue is today we don't have hybrid mode, right? But we can sort of get hybrid mode with an external controller. So let's talk about how to do that. So I've switched to a preset that I've kind of made for this, and this isn't about tonal quality. This was literally just throwing a bunch of stuff together. And I want to talk about how you enable this. So the Quad Cortex is MIDI controllable. It's not terribly extensive, the amount of control you have, but it is enough to do what we need to do here. Now, in this case, I'm using an MC8 from Morningstar. Full disclosure, not sponsored, never, ever will be by anyone ever. But I honestly can't recommend Morningstar MIDI gear highly enough. It's truly excellent stuff. And their editor, which you see here, is fantastic. So I'm going to walk you through with this, but the principles and the ideas here apply with any MIDI controller. The key requirement being you have to be able to send multiple messages from a single action, single trigger, single button press or single whatever. So as long as you can send at least 3, then you can do the basics of this. If you have more options, you can do some more enhanced stuff that we'll get to. But as long as you can send 3 messages from a single action, a single button press on any MIDI controller that you have, this will work for you. What I'm going to do is walk through how to program what I call, or what has been called, I can't claim to have come up with it. I think it was from the Neural Discord in general, is pseudo-hybrid mode. So it's not real hybrid mode on the QC, but in some ways could be better. So let's take a look at that. So right now we're in scene mode. If I switch to stomp mode, you can see I've got all 8 buttons assigned. So I have a pitch shifter here. Let me see if I can turn this on. Right. We've got a pitch shifter. We've got an OD pedal. Again, this is not adjusted for tone. I just dropped things in here. I haven't said anything. We've got a compressor. We have a wah that's actually assigned to an expression pedal, so for auto engage. Right, and that should turn off. Get the pedal all the way down. There we go. We have 3 amps there, but prior to those, we have 3 modulation effects. So we've got a flanger, chorus, tremolo, and then post, we have a delay and a plate reverb. So everything's off at this point. So we've got all of our stomps assigned. Now, that would be great. We could use this, but see how we have 3 amps. You probably can't see that. You can see 1 amp, but next to it, there are 2 others. We can't easily enable or disable those without giving up some other functionality, right? Because we can only stomp 8 things. So we could go to scenes for that, and I could make different scenes where 1 amp is enabled, a 2nd amp is enabled. So maybe I have like a high gain here. I think that's what I tried. More high gain, more of a crunchy rock, and then something more clean. Okay, and then, but I have no other effects engaged. The only thing I'm changing in these scenes are the amps that are selected. So that's a key part of this setup is you want to program the scenes for the things that you need to switch that you don't want to be stomps. Okay, and then you need to come into stomp mode and assign your stomp blocks as you want them. One really important gotcha here is never, when you're in scene mode and you're adjusting your scenes, so if I'm working on the 2nd amp and I come into this pedal, I can change settings on this pedal, right? Which wouldn't affect things. We'll get into that a bit later. But if you can unassign parameters when you assign in the scene. If you touch the bypass while you're in scene mode, you will not be able to unassign that. It will forever be tied to the scene. So if it's bypassed, it sort of stays bypassed. I'm going to go into this a little bit more at the end, but it's something I want to talk about right now. Don't do that. The only way to unassign that is to delete the block, drag it off the grid and delete it, and then re-add it. So anything you want to be stompable in the pseudo-hybrid mode, make sure you can adjust parameters in scene mode. Do not adjust the bypass state in scene mode. I've done it accidentally when I'm trying to preview a setting on and off. So it's really easy to do. You just have to be really careful about that. And again, I'll cover that kind of in a separate section at the end for like gotchas. But just a heads up now, if you're following along, be very careful about that. So we're going to go back. Yeah, we'll go back to scene A, and then I'll switch back into stomp mode. All right. So let's do some programming. We're essentially going to tell the Quad Cortex to switch to scene mode, change the scene, and then immediately go back into stomp mode. So what happens in this initial setup is the Morningstar, the MIDI controller, becomes the scene controller of the hybrid mode, and the QC stays as the stomp controller. And in this way, we would get 8 scenes with 8 stomps. So this is even more flexible than you could get with actual hybrid mode directly on the QC. It does mean a lot of tap dancing, right? You're going between these 8 buttons and these 8 buttons, but you do have an immense amount of flexibility. So here's how we program that. We're on, let me just make sure. Okay, yeah, we're on preset A, and we'll call this 1 for our first scene. I only have three scenes set up here. And the first thing we want to do, so on a press, I want to do a control change. And then the cool thing on the Morningstar editor is they have a MIDI dictionary. We're going to pick neural DSP. We're going to pick the Quad Cortex. And then we're going to pick change mode to scene. Go ahead and just apply that. Channel is 4 for my QC. So this first command, when we press the button, will change the QC to scene mode. Now for our second message, we want to do the same thing. It's also going to be triggered by that press. and a control change again. I'm going to use the dictionary. I'm sure there are faster ways to do this. Kind of trying to show. So now we're going to press, since amp 1 is scene A, we want to essentially switch to scene mode and then stomp, have the MIDI controller stomp on the A stomp on the Quad Cortex right over here. Again. And then we're going to do one last action for this, a third action. I'm kind of doing this the hard way or the long way to show it. You can do copy and paste in here, but this is also control change. Same thing, and we're going to essentially switch back to stomp mode. We'll walk through what's happening here. Stomp. Now that we see those CC values, we can kind of cheat. But it's CC47, 1 is scene, 2 is stomp. So we can copy these things. But what we defined here is 3 actions that are going to happen basically immediately. You'll see it happens very quick on the QC. We're switching to scene mode. We're stomping foot switch A, the second command. The third command switches us back to stomp mode. So let's go ahead and save this. See that the Morningstar first button is amp 1. Now nothing's going to happen because I'm already on scene A, but you can watch what the QC does. It's really quick. It might not even be showing up on camera. Let's do this. Let's forcibly switch to scene mode and be on amp 2. Go back to stomp mode. And if we're playing there and I want to switch to amp 1, it's that quick. And I'm back into stomp mode, which means on amp 1, I can toggle in anything I need to, independent of that. Now, this doesn't really get exciting until I add in the following command, so we can switch between these. So let's program amp 2 on this button. So here I know CC36. So these just go up in order. This is 35, 36, 37, 38, so on and so forth. So I'm going to update that, and we'll name this one amp 2. Save it. So now on our Morningstar, we have amp 1 and amp 2. So I can switch to amp 2 now. Switch back to amp 1. But why is this hybrid mode? Well, because I can be in this scene and I can enable the delay and switch back to amp 1. This stays enabled because the stomp is enabled. But the state of the stomp blocks now persists across my scene changes. Whatever they may be. If I only reverb, but on this amp, I can do that. If I want to enable chorus, doesn't sound like much. Let's try. There we go. It's a flanger. So you can see how the stomp mode persists. So I can program. I won't go through the rest. Well, I guess I'll do amp 3 just to do it. So there we go. So now we have amp 1, 2, and 3. So boom, amp 3. And so we do that. So we can enable the pitch shifter. And now we have pitch shift totally external to the scenes. Let's do kind of what we did with the previous one. Let's switch the delay between scenes, or let's switch like the overdrive pedal. Not like I think it's going to sound good, but let's just let's say, so for the first amp, let's say we want to go with more of a, whatever, the traditional tube screamer. So I'm not touching the bypass state. I'm only adjusting the parameter. So you see this icon here? This is what I was talking about. I can tap that and unassign that value from this scene. If you touch bypass, you can't. Right, so in level 10, overdrive at 0, whatever, leave the tone slightly shifted for this scene. And now for scene B, this is kind of our crunch amp. Maybe I want a little bit more gain, but I don't want as much boost. So the power here is that I can blend, and maybe I don't need the tone, right? Maybe put the tone back. So I can blend the fact that the stomp works, but when I change scenes, I'll have different settings, right? You can see those. This camera is really crap. I don't know that you can see that at all. So you'll just have to trust me. So let's go to amp A, and we enable our 808. Not a huge difference. But then we go to amp B. I'm just going to bring this up. I don't know if it's going to stay. You can see, hopefully, that has changed. So what's cool is the overdrive is still stomp controlled. It persists across the scenes, but the settings can change per scene. So now I can have 8 different settings, potentially. So let's say I do 2 scenes per amp. I can do 6 scenes now. I can have different parameters on every block that is stomp controlled that are different, as well as the amp or anything else. But I still have stomp control out of band from the scenes. So stomp controllable OD, scene controllable parameters of that OD, that will work for any other block as well. And then, so you get 8 scenes, 8 stomps, plus 2 expression pedals, right? So, so yeah, so you can have 10 essentially stompable or engageable blocks with 8 scenes control parameters. Let's say if you didn't want to do this tap dance, you could just do everything off of the Morningstar or your MIDI controller, and you could do 4x4, or you could do 2 scenes and 6 stomps, or 3 scenes and 5 stomps, or 5 scenes and 3 stomps, right? You could mix and match based on how you program this. So if you just wanted to switch scenes, right, you'd program it just like this. And then let's put a stomp. Let's just give stomp control to E. Okay, so now, perfect. So now, just on the Morningstar, I can still do switch to amp 1 down here. Trem. Switch to amp 2 with the trem. And I can stomp it off. So instead of having to go to the QC, I can just do it here. The cool thing about doing it this way that I want to show you is you can do momentary. So right now I have it set press to toggle the trem. I come here and I say long press release. Actually, copy this. Basically the same. The only thing I'm changing is this. So long press release. I'm essentially just going to send the exact same message. I'm going to send as if I'm pressing that stomp again. So what happens now, let me turn this off, and let's switch to amp 2. So now with that off, if I tap it, it's a regular stomp. But if I press and hold it, it's on, and when I let go, it turns off. So now you can do momentary. Let's say you wanted to kick in a boost. You could hold that down while you're playing. Sorry, my arm is crossing over the strings. So I keep muting it with the sleeve of my shirt. And then you can let go when you want that out, or whatever effect, a chorus, a flanger. Maybe you're doing, unchained, and you just want the flange to come in when you're doing your palm mutes. You can press it in momentarily and then turn it off. The other thing you can do, because again, the QC doesn't support sort of multiple gestures, is maybe on that same stomp, I want to control trem and flange for some reason. So I think we can just go ahead and do. Let's speed it up because all I care about is the action. So I want to do on a double tap. Still want to enable that. I also want to send the flange is. I think. So now I'm going to toggle 2 blocks. See if that works. So we have single press, trem enabled. Let's do this. We can do it. Single press, stop. Press and hold. Let go. And then if we double tap, I picked the wrong one. We got the OD and the trem. So I can do multiple blocks simultaneously. And if I wanted those to be toggles, I just switch the state elsewhere, right? So now double press toggles. Now it will toggle by inverting, so one on, one off simultaneously. So we've got 3 different ways to stomp on this one button by using the Morningstars, our stomp controller, and our scene controller. And we would still theoretically have the QC for 8 more stomps. So you can mix and match anything you want on the Morningstar and still leverage the buttons over here. But if this is remote and all you have is this controller, you can still do hybrid mode and split it up any way you want. So I'm going to run through that one more time. Single press. If you're looking at the programming over on the editor, you can see this is message 1. It's on, single press, off. So it's just a straight toggle. Long press release means if I press and hold, when I let go, that command will get triggered. So message 2 is what gives us our momentary. Press, hold, and release. And then double tap will give us, we're sending 2 messages, message 3 and message 4, to not only toggle the trem, but the OD. I screwed it up, I think. So this is a ton of flexibility and everything I think you could want from hybrid mode right now. And in fact, some things you wouldn't even be able to do with hybrid mode. So hopefully this tutorial is helpful. I guess let me know in the comments, or if there are any other thoughts you have or things you want to see me try and program with the MC8. All right, thanks.